Emma, only 9 years old, begged her mother for the 5th time in a row not to go to Sunday lunch at her grandfather's house. For 4 whole months, every Thursday, the girl would come back from Richard's house completely quietly and lock herself in her room without saying a word. When Sarah finally pressed her daughter more firmly, sitting next to her on the bed and holding her small hands, Emma whispered, trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Grandpa said, it's our special secret, Mom. No one can know. What really happened in that ordinary suburban home in Springfield, Massachusetts, would reveal an absolutely devastating truth that would change everything forever. But to understand how we got to this moment of despair, we need to go back a few weeks in time and know the full story of this family." Sarah Thompson was 36 years old and worked as a dedicated nurse at Springfield Memorial Hospital, one of the leading hospitals in the area. She has always been an extremely zealous and protective mother, especially after she became Emma's single mother 7 years ago, when her ex-husband decided to abandon the family without further explanation. Since then, Sarah has raised her daughter alone, working long and tiring shifts to ensure a comfortable and safe life for both of them. The relationship between mother and daughter has always been deeply close and loving. Sarah made sure to be present at every important moment in Emma's life, even with the hospital's tight schedule. They had sacred rituals that strengthened the bonds between the two. Every Saturday morning, Sarah would wake up early to whip up chocolate chip pancakes, Emma's favorite breakfast. The two would sit at the kitchen table, talking about everything from the cartoons Emma watched to playing with her friends at Riverside Elementary School. Emma was an extremely cheerful, talkative and energetic 9-year-old girl. Her light brown hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled whenever she told lively stories about her day at school. The girl loved to draw, spent hours creating imaginary worlds with colored pencils and colored markers. She was popular with her classmates, always participative in class and adored by teacher Mrs. Anderson, who constantly praised her performance and creativity at parents' meetings. Their lives ran smoothly and safely in a cozy 2-bedroom home in the quiet neighborhood of Maple Avenue, a middle-class area of Springfield known for its shady trees and stable families. It was the kind of place where children played on the sidewalks until sunset and neighbors greeted each other with genuine smiles. Sarah had managed to build a stable life for Emma, and it filled her heart with maternal pride. His paternal grandfather, Richard Thompson, was 68 years old and an extremely respected figure in the community. He lived alone in a larger house, located on Oak Street, just a 15-minute drive from Sarah and Emma's residence. Richard had been a widower for 3 years, ever since his wife Martha passed away after a long battle with breast cancer. The loss had been devastating for the man, who spent months visibly shaken, losing weight and temporarily withdrawing from the social activities he enjoyed so much. In this video, you'll discover how one mother trusted her maternal instinct even when absolutely everyone around her said she was overreacting and being paranoid. You'll see how subtle little signs, those details that most people would overlook or consider unimportant, have become the fundamental key to saving your daughter from a dire situation. Because sometimes motherly courage and determination can change everything in a matter of hours. Every detail you will learn about here is based on real events that happened in an ordinary family, like so many others. If you've come this far, it's because real history interests you and you value content that can really make a difference in people's lives. Help this important content reach more families. Leave the like now, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any stories that can save lives. 3 months before that moment of despair in Emma's room, the Thompson family's life was going on with an established and quiet routine. Sarah worked shifts at the hospital that varied between morning and afternoon, but every Thursday she had to cover the shift that ended only at 7 in the evening. On these particular days, She was completely dependent on the support of her father-in-law Richard to take care of Emma during the afternoons after school. The arrangement had worked perfectly for more than 2 years. Every Thursday, the school bus dropped Emma off directly at her grandfather's house at 3:30 p.m. Richard was always waiting on the porch with a wide smile on his face, waving to his granddaughter, who was running off the yellow bus with her backpack on her back. It was a scene that was repeated weekly with genuine joy on both sides. Emma loved these afternoons at Grandpa Richard's house. He prepared the girl's favorite dish, homemade macaroni and cheese au gratin in the oven, following an old recipe that Martha, his late wife, used to make. The delicious smell filled the kitchen while Emma did her homework, sitting at the large wooden table. After lunch, the next 2 hours were devoted to pure fun in the huge backyard that Richard kept impeccably cared for. The backyard was Emma's private paradise. It had a swing hanging from the centuries-old oak tree, a little wooden house painted pink that Richard had built with his own hands 2 years ago, and a colourful garden full of flowers that Martha had planted before she died. Emma spent hours playing house, swaying to the clouds and chasing butterflies among the flowers. Richard usually sat on the back porch watching his granddaughter play, an open book on his lap and hot coffee in his cup. Sarah felt a deep and genuine gratitude for her father-in-law. Even after the complicated divorce with his son, Richard never distanced himself from his granddaughter or created difficulties for Sarah. On the contrary, he had become an essential father figure in Emma's life, filling the void left by her absent father. Sarah trusted Richard completely, never had a single reason to doubt the character of the man everyone in the neighborhood respected and admired. Richard Thompson was more than just a devoted grandfather. He was considered a pillar of the Springfield community. Retired 8 years ago, Richard had been an elementary school teacher for nearly 40 years, teaching generations of children to read and write. Former students often stopped on the street to greet him with affection and gratitude, remembering the creative lessons and infinite patience Professor Thompson showed with each student. In addition, Richard was an active member of the local St. Mary's Church, located in historic downtown Springfield. Every Sunday morning, he occupied the same bench in the 3rd row, always punctual and dressed in an impeccable suit and tie. After Mass, she often helped Father Matthews organize community events, charity bazaars, and dinners to raise funds for families in need. His reputation was absolutely impeccable. The neighbors of Oak Street spoke wonders of Richard. Mrs. Patterson, a 72-year-old lady who had lived next door for more than 20 years, always remarked on how helpful Richard was. He would mow her lawn when he saw it was too high, fix minor problems with the fence shared between the properties, and always stop to chat when he found her watering the plants. The Morrisons, who lived across the street, trusted Richard so much that they left the keys to the house with him when they traveled on summer vacation. Sarah saw Richard not only as a father-in-law, but as a genuine blessing in their lives. She worked grueling shifts at the hospital, dealt with patients in critical situations, returned home mentally and physically exhausted. Knowing that Emma was safe, well cared for, and happy at her grandfather's house brought invaluable peace of mind. Richard never charged a penny for the care of his granddaughter. On the contrary, he often presented Emma with new clothes, children's books and toys that the girl loved. Sundays were also sacred in the Thompson family. After Mass at St. Mary's Church, Sarah and Emma would head directly to Richard's house for the traditional family lunch. Richard prepared complete and delicious meals, always taking care of the preparation. Juicy roasts, fresh vegetables from the local market, homemade desserts that melted in your mouth. The large dining room table was set with an embroidered tablecloth, porcelain crockery that had belonged to Martha, and fresh flowers in the center. Emma always looked forward to these Sunday lunches. She liked to help her grandfather put the dishes on the table, fold the cloth napkins, and fill the glasses with fresh orange juice. After lunch, While Sarah and Richard talked about everyday matters in the living room, Emma explored the house she knew by heart. She ran up and down the stairs, played in the guest room that Richard kept decorated especially for her, leafed through the old books on the library shelf. Richard's house was too big for one person. 2 floors, 4 bedrooms, large living room, spacious kitchen, and that huge backyard. There was also a full basement where Richard kept tools, Christmas decorations, boxes with old memories, and some toys that Emma used occasionally when it rained and couldn't play in the yard. The basement had a small old refrigerator where Richard stored extra drinks for when he had visitors. Sarah never imagined that something could be wrong in that seemingly perfect family structure. Richard was the ideal grandfather. The community respected him. Emma seemed happy. There was absolutely no reason to be suspicious or question. Life went on at a predictable and comfortable pace, exactly as Sarah always wanted to provide for her daughter after the traumatic separation from her ex-husband. But then, 3 months ago, a specific Thursday in late September brought the first seed of discomfort that Sarah would desperately try to ignore for weeks. She arrived to pick Emma up at Richard's house at exactly 6 in the afternoon, as she always did after finishing her shift at the hospital. He parked the car in the driveway, grabbed his purse from the passenger seat, and walked to the front door. He rang the doorbell twice. Richard opened the door with his usual smile, but there was something different in the air. Sarah couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, just a vague feeling that something wasn't completely normal. "Hi, Sarah." Come in, come in. Emma is in the living room watching cartoons." Richard stepped aside to let her pass, drying his hands on a tea towel. Sarah went in and immediately looked for her daughter. Emma was sitting on the beige sofa in the living room, holding tight to her brown teddy bear, the one that slept with her every night. The television showed a colourful and noisy cartoon, but Emma didn't seem to be paying attention. She stared at the screen with a distant, almost blank expression. What caught Sarah's attention the most was that Emma, seeing her enter, did not run to hug her as she always did. "Hello, my love. Ready to go home?" Sarah approached the sofa, bending down to be at her daughter's eye level. Emma only nodded slightly, pressing the teddy bear even more to her chest. His green eyes, normally so bright and full of life, seemed dull. Sarah felt a strange twinge in her stomach, but quickly pushed the thought away. She played a lot in the backyard today. She got tired. Richard explained behind Sarah's back, his calm, natural voice. He ran to and fro until he was completely tired. "You know how a child you are, right? When he starts playing, he doesn't want to stop." Sarah turned to look at her father-in-law, who was smiling quietly. "Of course, I imagine she must be exhausted." "Emma, grab your backpack, baby. Let's go home to take a shower and have dinner." The girl got up from the couch in slow motion, picked up the pink backpack on the floor near the door, and walked over to her mother without saying a word. In the car, during the 15-minute drive to Maple Avenue, Emma was completely silent. Sarah tried to strike up a conversation a few times, asking about the day at school, about homework, about what she had played in Grandpa's backyard. The answers were monosyllabic or just nods. Emma kept her face turned to the window, watching the houses and trees pass quickly. "Maybe she's just tired," Sarah thought to herself, pushing away the little pang of worry that insisted on growing in the back of her mind. Children have difficult days at school. They get irritable, tired. It's perfectly normal. There's no reason to worry about that. But in the following weeks, the pattern began to repeat itself in a worrying way. Every Thursday, when Sarah picked Emma up from Richard's house, the girl was quiet, distant, hugging the teddy bear tightly. The changes were too subtle for others to notice, but Sarah knew every detail of her daughter's personality. He knew every facial expression, every tone of voice, every body gesture, and something was definitely different. Emma began to have difficulty sleeping, something that had never happened before. The girl had always slept soundly all night since she was a baby, but now she woke up scared in the middle of the night, calling for her mother in a trembling voice. Sarah would run to her daughter's room, turn on the light of the rabbit-shaped lamp on the bedside table, and find Emma sitting on the bed, hugging her knees to her chest, eyes wide with fear. "Nightmares?" Sarah asked gently, sitting on the edge of the bed and brushing the strands of hair away from her daughter's sweaty face. Emma only nodded her head affirmatively, but never told her what she dreamed about. After a few nights like this, Emma asked to leave the hallway light on all night. Sarah immediately agreed, worried, but still not fully understanding what was happening. On Sundays, during the traditional lunches at Richard's house, Sarah began to observe even more evident behavioral changes. Emma, who always ate with a voracious appetite everything her grandfather prepared, now pushed the food across the plate without actually eating. 2 forks of pasta, 3 pieces of carrots, a sip of juice. He spent most of his lunch pushing food back and forth with his fork, creating abstract designs on the porcelain plate. "Aren't you hungry, baby?" Richard asked with genuine concern in his voice, watching his granddaughter from the head of the table. Emma muttered something inaudible without looking up from her plate. Sarah also noticed, but attributed it to normal changes in children's appetite. Maybe it's in a growth phase, maybe the body is adjusting. Children go through phases. But what caught Sarah's attention the most was how Emma began to avoid being alone with Richard. During Sunday lunches, the girl who had previously explored the entire house freely now remained glued to her mother's side the entire time. When Sarah got up to help wash the dishes in the kitchen, Emma immediately followed her. When Sarah went to the bathroom, Emma waited outside the door. The most telling situation happened on a specific Sunday in October, when the leaves of the trees were already beginning to fall, creating golden carpets on the sidewalks. After lunch, Richard suggested that Emma help him fetch dessert from the basement, where he kept the extra fridge with the chocolate cake he had bought from the downtown bakery in the morning. "Emma, come with me to get the cake downstairs." Richard stood up from the table, napkin in hand. Emma's reaction was instantaneous and impossible to ignore. The girl froze completely, fork suspended in the air. His eyes widened in visible panic. The color faded from his small face. Her hands began to tremble holding the glass of orange juice, causing the liquid to swing dangerously close to the rim. "I can help too." Sarah quickly rose from her chair, maternal instinct activated by the terror evident in her daughter's eyes. "Let's all get this dessert together." Richard turned to look at Sarah, and for a split second she picked up something different in his expression. Irritation, frustration. It went by so fast that Sarah almost thought she had imagined it. The father-in-law soon smiled normally, shaking his head. "No need, Sarah, it's quick. I'm just going to get the cake that's in the fridge downstairs. You can rest. You must be tired from the week in the hospital. I insist." Sarah was already walking towards the door that led to the basement, placing her protective hand on Emma's back. "Let's all go together. It's no problem." The 3 descended the narrow wooden staircase that led to the basement. Sarah kept Emma in front, a gentle but firm hand on the girl's shoulder. Richard's basement was neat and clean, lit by fluorescent lights on the ceiling. Metal shelves lined the walls, held categorized tools, labeled clear plastic boxes, carefully stored seasonal decorations. In the right corner, the old white refrigerator hummed softly. Richard walked over to the fridge, opened the door, and pulled out a cardboard box containing the chocolate cake. "Okay, it's here. Let's go up." He smiled, but Sarah noticed that he didn't look directly into her eyes. All the time in the basement, Emma held her mother's hand with desperate tightness, small fingers squeezing with intensity that hurt. On the way back home that Sunday, driving through the quiet streets of Springfield with Emma in the back seat, hugging the teddy bear, Sarah finally admitted to herself that she could no longer ignore what she was seeing. Something was deeply wrong. The maternal instinct, that inner voice that all mothers know, screamed louder and louder. It wasn't paranoia, it wasn't exaggeration, it wasn't imagination. His daughter was afraid of her own grandfather. That Sunday night, after a light and quiet dinner, After Emma brushed her teeth and put on her unicorn pajamas, Sarah sat next to her daughter in bed. The soft light of the rabbit-shaped lampshade created comforting shadows on the walls, decorated with colorful designs. Sarah took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for a conversation she knew was absolutely necessary. "My love, I need you to be honest with me about one thing." Sarah took Emma's small hand between hers, looking directly into the girl's green eyes. "Are you happy when you go to Grandpa's house?" Emma looked away immediately, fixing her eyes on the flowered blankets. Her lips trembled slightly, and Sarah saw tears beginning to form in the corners of her eyes. The girl didn't answer with words, just pressed the teddy bear tighter to her chest. "If anything is bothering you, you can tell me. I promise I won't be mad at you, no matter what." Sarah brushed the strands of hair away from her daughter's face with infinite tenderness. "Mothers exist to protect their daughters, and I will always protect you. Always." Emma opened her mouth as if to speak, but hesitated. The words seemed to be stuck in their throats, struggling to get out, but hindered by some unseen force. Finally, in a low, trembling voice that broke Sarah's heart to pieces, the girl whispered, "Grandpa said that if I tell you, something bad will happen." Sarah's blood instantly froze in her veins. Her heart raced in her chest, beating so hard she could hear it in her own ears. Her hands began to tremble, but she forced herself to keep her external calm so as not to scare her daughter even more. "Tell what, my love? What does Grandpa not want you to tell?" Emma nodded her head negatively, tears finally streaming down her rosy cheeks. "He said it's our special secret, and that you'll be very mad at me if you find out. He said that I promised to keep the secret, and good girls don't break promises." Sarah took 3 deep breaths, fighting the panic and anger that were beginning to rise up her throat. He kept his voice calm, gentle, comforting, even though every fiber of his being wanted to scream in despair. "My love, look at me." Sarah held Emma's face with both hands, forcing eye contact. "Nothing, absolutely nothing you tell me will make me mad at you. I promise with all my heart, whatever that secret is, it's never your fault. Never." Emma sobbed softly, squinting tightly. "But I promised Grandpa. He's going to be sad with me. Some secrets should not be kept, dear, especially if they make you scared or sad." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, feeling her little body tremble in her arms. "You don't need to tell me right now if you're not ready. But I want you to know that I'm here, I'll always be here, and nothing is too important or too scary for us to talk about together." Emma said nothing more that night. Eventually he fell asleep, still hugging the teddy bear, breathing slowly, calming down as Sarah stroked his hair. But Sarah didn't sleep all night. She sat in the armchair in Emma's room, watching her daughter sleep, her mind running at impossible speed. What did that man do to my daughter? The thought hammered in Sarah's head non-stop, louder and louder, more and more desperate. What kind of secret would make a 9-year-old be so terrified? Why was Emma so afraid to tell? What happened on Thursdays when she was alone with Richard? Sarah spent all that sleepless night thinking, analyzing, remembering every detail of the last few weeks. The changes in behavior, the nightmares, the refusal to eat, the visible fear of being alone with her grandfather, the reaction of pure panic when Richard suggested that she go down to the basement. The signs were all there, Sarah realized with growing horror. She just didn't want to see because she blindly trusted Richard, because he was family, because everyone respected him. When the sun finally rose on Monday morning, painting the sky orange and pink through Emma's bedroom window, Sarah had already made a decision. She would investigate discreetly, carefully, without alerting Richard in any way. She would find out what was happening, gather hard evidence if necessary, and protect her daughter from any threat, no matter who the aggressor was. If this revelation is arousing in you a deep curiosity and also a genuine concern about what really happened, comment right now below, "I want more true stories," and please leave your like on this video so that more people know warning signs that can save children. On Monday morning, while preparing breakfast and watching Emma eat cereal quietly at the kitchen table, Sarah took the first concrete action of her investigation. As soon as she dropped her daughter off at school and arrived at the hospital for her shift during the mid-morning break, she called Riverside Elementary from her cell phone, sitting in a secluded corner of the nurse's break room. "Good morning. This is Sarah Thompson, mother of third-grade Emma Thompson. I would like to talk to Professor Mrs. Anderson, please. It's about my daughter's behavior." Sarah kept her voice professional, trying not to let despair overflow into words. After a few minutes of waiting with instrumental music playing on the phone, Mrs. Anderson's warm, familiar voice finally answered. "Sarah? Hi, dear. How are you, Emma? She's not sick, is she?" "No, that's not it." Sarah took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "I was wondering if you've noticed any changes in Emma's behavior over the past few weeks. Anything different from her normal?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sarah could hear children's voices in the background, probably in the playground. Mrs. Anderson sighed lightly before answering. "Actually, yes. I was wanting to talk to you about it. Emma has always been such a participative and cheerful student, but in the last 6 weeks she has been much more withdrawn." Sarah's stomach turned. 6 weeks. Exactly the period in which the changes began. In what sense retracted? She no longer raises her hand to answer questions as she used to. She's quieter during recess, plays less with the other girls. Academic performance dropped slightly, nothing drastic, but remarkable for an excellent student as she always was. Mrs. Anderson paused again. "And there's something that caught my attention in art class last week." "What?" Sarah pressed the phone tighter to her ear, heart racing. She designed a large house during the free activity. It was very detailed, with windows, door, backyard. But all the windows of what appeared to be the basement were painted completely black, with black crayons. When I asked about the drawing, she just said it was Grandpa's house and changed the subject quickly. Sarah felt nausea rising in her throat. The basement. He always went back to the basement. "I understand. Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Anderson. I'm going to investigate what's going on at home. If you need any support from the school, please let me know. I'm here to help." The teacher seemed genuinely worried. "Emma is a special girl. We want to see her well." After hanging up, Sarah sat for long minutes in the empty break room, processing the information. The evidence was accumulating in a terrifying way. Behavioral changes, confirmed by third parties, disturbing drawings, specific fear of the basement. It was not the imagination of a paranoid mother. Something was really going on. Over the next week, Sarah tried to talk discreetly with some mothers in Richard's neighborhood, looking for any information that might help. He needed to know if other children were also staying with him, if there were any complaints, any sign that other people were suspicious of something. On Wednesday afternoon, Sarah knocked on the door of Mrs. Patterson, the 72-year-old neighbor who had lived next door to Richard for more than 20 years. The lady answered with a welcoming smile, surprised but happy with the unexpected visit. "Sarah, dear, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, come in. I'm going to make tea for us." Mrs. Patterson opened the door wide, motioning for Sarah to enter the room full of antique furniture and family pictures on the walls. As they sipped chamomile tea from delicate porcelain cups, Sarah led the conversation carefully. "Mrs. Patterson, you know Richard well, don't you? She has lived here next door to him for so long." "Oh, yes. Richard is a wonderful man. He always has been." The lady nodded approvingly, especially after he lost Martha, poor thing. It was so sad to see him suffer like that, and he always helped a lot with children, right? Sarah tried to keep the tone casual, taking a sip of the hot tea. As a teacher, taking care of Emma. Mrs. Patterson smiled nostalgically. "He is a saint, that man. Years ago, when my grandchildren were young and came to visit me in the summer, Richard would always offer to help. He took them out for ice cream, let them play in his backyard. I never had a single problem. The children adored Mr. Thompson." Sarah forced a smile, but the tightness in her chest increased. No one saw any problem. Everyone blindly trusted Richard. And you never notice anything strange? Any different behavior? Strange? No, never. Why? Did something happen? Mrs. Patterson frowned, confused. No, just curiosity. Sarah quickly disagreed with her, not wanting to spread suspicion without concrete evidence. It's just that Emma has been a little quiet lately. I thought it could be some phase. Ah, children really go through phases. I'm sure it's just a phase. The lady patted Sarah's hand comfortingly. Emma is such a sweet girl, and Richard loves her so much. She is in good hands with her grandfather. Sarah said goodbye manners, but left Mrs. Patterson's house feeling completely isolated. She also talked to 2 more neighbors in the following days, and they all had the same opinion. Richard was wonderful, reliable, a man of respect. No one had ever suspected anything inappropriate. Am I seeing things that don't exist? Sarah wondered for the 1,000th time, driving back home after one of those frustrating conversations. Is it the paranoia of an overprotective mother? Everyone trusts him. Everyone says he's perfect. Maybe I'm creating problems where there aren't any. But then Sarah would come home, see Emma huddled on the living room couch with the teddy bear pressed to her chest, and stare far away at the television without actually watching, and knew she wasn't imagining anything. He knew his daughter. He knew every expression, every gesture. Emma was suffering. She was afraid. And this fear had a name and an address. On Wednesday evening of that same week, after putting Emma to sleep, Sarah sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop. The house was in absolute silence, only the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock breaking the silence. Sarah opened the browser and began researching signs of child abuse, every article she read making her stomach churn with growing horror. Sudden change in behavior. Emma presented this clearly. Nightmares and difficulty sleeping. Emma woke up scared almost every night now. Social withdrawal and drop in school performance. Mrs. Anderson had confirmed both. Fear of a specific person or place. Emma's reaction to the basement and to Richard himself was undeniable. Mention of secrets that cannot be told. Emma's own words echoed in Sarah's mind. It's our special secret. Sarah wept silently at the kitchen table, wiping away tears with the backs of her trembling hands. How could you not see it before? How did you let this happen for so long? Overwhelming guilt threatened to suffocate her, but Sarah forced herself to take a deep breath and focus. It wasn't time to blame yourself, it was time to act. She opened a new tab in her browser and searched for Richard Thompson's full name in online public records from Springfield, Massachusetts. He looked for criminal records, processes, any information that could be hidden in his past. He found nothing. Completely clean record. She checked groups of parents on social networks in the region, looking for mentions of Richard's name, the elementary school where he worked for decades, anything that might offer clues. Again, nothing but positive comments from former students thanking the dedicated teacher who taught them how to read. Frustrated but not giving up, Sarah had an idea. He took out his cell phone and sent a message to Jennifer, his older sister who lived in Boston. Jennifer was always more assertive, more suspicious, while Sarah tended to see the best in people. Jen, I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you call when you have time? Nothing in this story happened by chance, and what you're discovering here may be the missing piece to fully understand how predators operate, hidden behind masks of respect and trust. Stay until the end, as the most surprising and revealing moment is yet to come. The phone rang less than 5 minutes later. Jennifer never ignored messages from her sister, especially when the tone was serious. Sarah, what happened? Her sister's voice sounded worried. Sarah told everything. He poured out weeks of pent-up worry, described every change in Emma's behavior, repeated the conversation about the special secret, mentioned the panicked reaction in the basement. She talked non-stop for 15 minutes, while Jennifer listened in absolute silence on the other end of the line. When Sarah finally finished, exhausted and with a choked voice, Jennifer answered without hesitation. Sarah, you need to stop leaving Emma alone with him immediately. It doesn't matter what the neighbors say. It doesn't matter what his reputation is. If your daughter is afraid, if she talks about secrets that scare her, something is very wrong. But what if I'm exaggerating? What if it's just a childhood phase, and I destroy her relationship with her grandfather out of paranoia? Sarah felt torn between her maternal instinct and the fear that she was making a terrible mistake. What if you're not overreacting? Jennifer countered firmly. What if something is really going on, and you keep leaving Emma alone with him? What mistake can you live with, Sarah? The mistake of protecting your daughter too much, or the mistake of not protecting enough? The silence that followed was laden with painful truth. Jennifer was absolutely right. Sarah knew in her heart of hearts what the right answer was. You're right. God, you are right. He is the father of my ex-husband, Jen. He was always so good to us. Abusers usually are. Jennifer sighed sadly. They build impeccable reputations exactly so that no one will believe them when victims try to speak out. Sarah, listen. On Thursday of this week, don't leave Emma with him. Make up any excuse, leave work early, ask someone to pick her up from school. Just don't let her go back to that house. But Sarah knew that just avoiding Richard temporarily wouldn't solve anything. She needed concrete answers. She needed to find out what was really happening. If something was really going on, and she just disappeared with Emma without proof, without confirmation, Richard could continue to do the same with other children. The idea was intolerable. I'm going to find out the truth first. Sarah felt determination hardening her voice. I'm going to make her talk to me. I'm going to investigate further. I'm going to find evidence if that's the case. But I won't let this go on another day. The following Thursday, Sarah did something she had never done before. She called the hospital claiming a family emergency and left the shift early. Instead of letting Emma go to Richard's house after school, as she always did, Sarah was waiting in person at the door of Riverside Elementary when the students left at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Emma appeared among the group of children running around the courtyard, backpack on her back. When he saw his mother there waiting instead of the usual school bus, his expression was one of pure and instant relief. Her eyes lit up. A genuine smile appeared on her face for the first time in weeks. She ran over to Sarah and hugged her tightly. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Emma asked, but there was no confusion in her voice, only happiness. "I decided to leave early to spend the afternoon together." Sarah kissed the top of her daughter's head, feeling her heart tighten. "How about we go eat ice cream and then go home? We can make cookies together." The afternoon was the best Sarah and Emma had spent together in weeks. They went to the ice cream parlor downtown, ordered giant sundaes with colorful toppings and sprinkles. Emma chatted excitedly about classes, about a science project they were doing, about her friend Maya, who had gotten a puppy over the weekend. It was as if an old version of Emma, that cheerful and talkative girl, was slowly returning. Back home, they made chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen. Emma helped stir the dough, lick the wooden spoon, make balls with her little hands. The delicious smell took over the house as the cookies baked. The two sat on the living room floor, eating still warm cookies, watching Emma's favorite movie about an adventurous princess. When Sarah's phone rang at 6:30 p.m., she already knew who it was. Richard's name lit up the screen. She answered in a neutral voice. "Hi, Richard. Sarah, Emma didn't come today. Is everything okay? I was waiting for the school bus, but she didn't get off. I'm worried." His voice sounded genuinely worried, confused. Sorry I didn't warn you. I left work early today, so I picked her up straight from school." Sarah kept the tone light, casual. "We decided to spend the afternoon together." "I see." There was a strange pause. "And next week? Will it be normal Thursday?" "Actually, Richard, my schedule at the hospital is going to change temporarily. I'll be able to pick up Emma straight from school for a while." Sarah improvised quickly. "But thank you for all the support you have always given. It means a lot to us." Another pause, longer this time. "Of course, no problem. If you need something, just let me know." Richard hung up soon after, but Sarah picked up on something different in his tone. Tension, frustration. It was impossible to be sure, but the feeling remained. Over the weekend, Sarah made another crucial decision. She cancelled Sunday lunch at Richard's house for the first time in years, claiming that Emma had a mild virus and it was better to stay home and rest. Richard offered to bring soup and medicine, but Sarah politely declined, saying she had everything under control. Emma did not question the decision not to go to her grandfather's house. On the contrary, she seemed relieved again. She spent the whole Sunday more relaxed, playing with dolls, drawing at the kitchen table, smiling more. It was as if an invisible weight was being lifted from the small shoulders week after week away from Richard. If this story is already changing the way you see the absolute importance of maternal protection and trust in the instinct that every mother carries, like this video, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so that this vital message reaches other mothers who may be going through the same situation right now. But Sarah knew that avoiding Richard indefinitely was not a permanent solution. She needed confirmation. She needed to understand what had happened. She needed concrete evidence if more drastic measures needed to be taken. It was then that she had an idea that kept her awake for another whole night, pondering the ethical and legal aspects. On Monday morning, Sarah went to an electronics store in downtown Springfield. She walked through the illuminated corridors filled with gadgets, feeling like a spy in an action movie. He finally found what he was looking for: an audio recording app that could be discreetly installed on tablets and would automatically send recordings to the cloud. He also bought a small and discreet tablet, ideal for children. Arriving home, he installed the app carefully, set it to automatically record when activated, and tested it several times to make sure it worked perfectly. The recordings would be sent directly to a cloud storage account that Sarah created specifically for this purpose. But then the overwhelming ethical dilemma arose. Would it be right to record conversations without consent? Would it be cool to use this as evidence if you found something? And more importantly, was she really willing to send Emma back to Richard's house, even if it was with a recording device, if there really was danger? Sarah struggled with these questions for days. She spoke again with Jennifer, who advised her to seek legal advice before doing anything potentially problematic. She frantically researched recording and privacy laws in Massachusetts, was more confused than enlightened by all the complicated legal terminology. Finally, Sarah came to a conclusion. Instead of using hidden device that could be illegal and ethically questionable, she would do something more direct. He would confront Emma once again, but this time with a different, more patient approach, creating a completely safe environment for his daughter to open up in her time. On Wednesday night, 3 weeks after she had stopped leaving Emma with Richard, Sarah prepared everything carefully, made Emma's favorite dinner, chicken lasagna with melted cheese. She let her daughter watch 2 episodes of her favorite cartoon after the shower, and then, instead of sending Emma straight to bed, Sarah suggested that they talk in the bedroom. Sitting together on Emma's bed, Sarah hugged her daughter to her chest. "My love, have you noticed that we haven't been to Grandpa Richard's house anymore?" Emma tensed slightly, but nodded without saying anything. "And have you also noticed that you are no longer going there on Thursdays after school, as you always did?" Emma nodded again, this time looking directly at her mother. Her green eyes carried a mixture of relief and residual fear, as if she was still processing the new reality where she no longer needed to go to that place she feared so much. Sarah took a deep breath, choosing each word carefully. "I realize that you are happier when you don't go there. I notice that you sleep better, play more, smile more, and that tells me that something in Grandpa's house made you sad or afraid." Tears began to flow silently down Emma's face. She didn't try to hide or clean them up. She just let them fall as she squeezed the teddy bear hard enough to turn her fingers white. Sarah waited patiently, giving her daughter all the time she needed, keeping a protective arm around her small shoulders. "Mom, I didn't want you to be mad at me," Emma finally whispered in a choked voice, so low that Sarah had to lean in to hear clearly. "Grandpa said that if I told you our special secret, you would fight me. I was going to say that I'm a bad girl who tells lies." Sarah felt her heart shatter into millions of pieces inside her chest. The pain was physical, excruciating, almost unbearable, but he forced himself to keep the calm outside, to be the solid rock that Emma needed at that moment. "My love, look into my eyes." Sarah held her daughter's face gently in her hands. "There is nothing, absolutely nothing in this world that you can tell me that will make me mad at you, especially if it's something that hurt you or made you afraid." Emma sobbed, her little body trembling. "But I promised him. Good girls don't break promises. Some secrets are not meant to be kept, dear." Sarah wiped tears from her daughter's face with her thumbs, her own vision blurred by the tears she struggled to hold. "Especially secrets that make you feel bad inside. These secrets need to be told so that we can do whatever it takes for you to never feel that way again." "What was Grandpa doing that made you so afraid?" Sarah asked softly, mentally preparing herself for any answer, no matter how terrible. Emma closed her eyes tightly, as if she could block out the memories just by keeping her eyelids tight. When it opened again, the words began to flow out in a disorganized torrent, like a dam that had finally burst after months of withholding water. "He always asked me to go to the basement with him on Thursdays. He said he had special toys downstairs just for me. In the beginning it was cool, we played normal games." Sarah nodded encouragingly, keeping her expression neutral, even though every word was a stab in the heart. "Keep going, my love. I'm listening." "But then he started saying that he loved me in a special way." Emma swallowed, voice trembling dangerously. "He said it was different from how other people love, that it was our secret because other people wouldn't understand. He began to touch me in ways that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't hurting, but it was weird. He made me sit on his lap for a long time and hugged him in a very tight way." Sarah's hands trembled violently now, but she held them firmly on her daughter's face, anchor of safety amid the storm of horrific revelations. "Where did he touch you, Emma?" "On my shoulders, on my back, in my hair." Emma hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. And sometimes he ran his hand over my face in a strange way, too slowly. He kept saying that I was special, beautiful, that he liked me a lot. But the way he spoke scared me, Mom. It was different from when you say these things." Sarah fought the nausea running up her throat. He forced himself to keep asking. He needed to know the full extent of what had happened. "Did he ask you to do something you didn't want to do?" "He made me promise that he wouldn't tell anyone about our special time in the basement." Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "He said that if I told him, you would be very angry with me and would send me away from home, that you wouldn't love me anymore, that no one would believe me because he is an adult and I am a child." The classic manipulation, Sarah recognized with increasing horror. Richard had used exactly the tactics that the online articles described. Emotional isolation, veiled threats, making the victim feel that she would be punished if she revealed the abuse. It was calculated, deliberate, monstrous. "Emma, look at me." Sarah waited until she had full eye contact with her daughter. "He lied to you. I'll never ever send you away. I will always love you no matter what. And I believe every word you're telling me right now. Every word. You are very brave to tell me this, and I will do everything necessary to protect you. Won't he make me go to the basement anymore?" Emma asked in a small, vulnerable voice, breaking Sarah's heart even more. "You'll never have to see Grandpa Richard again if you don't want to." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, feeling her little body finally relax in her arms. "I promise, he will never come near you again." That night, after Emma finally fell asleep emotionally exhausted, Sarah sat in her bedroom armchair, watching her daughter sleep more soundly than she had in months. There were no nightmares tonight. There was no waking up scared. It was as if confessing the terrible secret she carried had freed Emma from an invisible prison. But for Sarah, the night was just the beginning of a battle she knew was necessary to fight. He took out his phone and began documenting everything Emma had told, writing down every detail in notes while it was still fresh in his memory. Every word, every description, every element of Richard's manipulation. I knew that this would be crucial for what would come next. The following Saturday, a week after the revealing conversation with Emma, Sarah was in her daughter's room, folding clean clothes that had just come out of the dryer. Emma was in the living room watching cartoons, and Sarah took advantage of the moment alone to organize her wardrobe. He took Emma's pink school bag that was lying in the corner of the room, deciding to organize it for Monday as well. As she opened her backpack and pulled out her school books, math notebooks and pencil cases, Sarah felt something deep inside. A small, thin notebook with a pink cover decorated with silver stars. It wasn't any of the school notebooks Sarah knew. She frowned, curious, and opened the notebook. What he saw on the pages made his blood run cold instantly in his veins. The first page contained a drawing made with colored pencils and markers. A tall figure with glasses, clearly male, next to a much smaller female figure with brown hair like Emma's. The house in the background had specific details, including windows and a door that led to what appeared to be a basement, detached with darker, stronger lines. Underneath the drawing, with irregular and slanted children's handwriting, words that made Sarah's stomach turn. Grandpa said secret, not counting Mum. Mum's going to be mad. Sarah's hands began to shake uncontrollably. He turned the page with fingers that could barely hold the thin paper. The next page contained a handwritten list, vertically arranged dates. Sarah recognized them all immediately. It was every Thursday for the past 3 months. Each date had a small mark next to it, as if Emma was recording every occurrence of what happened in Richard's house. Sarah felt her legs wobbly, the strength completely leaving her muscles. He sat heavily on the floor of Emma's room, his back against the bed, notebook trembling in his hands. He knew he should stop looking, that each page would be more painful than the last. But he couldn't. She needed to see. She needed to know the full extent of the trauma her daughter had endured alone for months. He kept turning pages, each revealing disturbing new drawings. One image showed 2 figures in what was clearly the basement, based on the shelves and boxes drawn in the background. The larger figure was very close to the smaller one, arms around in a hug, that even in the children's cartoon conveyed discomfort. Around the 2 figures, Emma had drawn hearts, but all painted solid black, with strong pressure on the pencil, deep marks on the paper. Another page contained more writing. The sentences were fragmented, disconnected, like thoughts that Emma needed to put on paper but didn't know how to organize. Grandpa says, "Love me special way. I don't like it when he hugs for a long time. I want to leave, but he says he stays a little longer. He smells weird when he gets close." Sarah read each line with growing horror, tears streaming freely now down her face. How did you not notice before? How did you let this happen for so long? The guilt was overwhelming, suffocating, threatening to swallow her completely. The last page of the notebook contained the phrase that finally broke Sarah completely. In careful childish handwriting, as if Emma had taken the time to write each word, deliberately choosing them. "I want Grandpa to stop, but he said he loves me in this special way, and that's how people who love each other stay together." Sarah dropped the notebook on the floor, staggered to her feet, and ran to the bathroom. He barely arrived in time to kneel in front of the toilet before vomiting violently. The body physically rejected the horror of what it had just discovered, as if it could expel the terrible reality through visceral reaction. When she finally managed to get up, legs still shaking, Sarah washed her face with ice water repeatedly. He looked at his own reflection in the bathroom mirror, saw a pale woman, eyes red with tears, a devastated expression. But behind the devastation, something else was being born. Fury. Absolute, ardent, implacable, maternal fury. He returned to Emma's room with renewed determination. He took out his phone and photographed every page of the notebook meticulously, ensuring that every word, every drawing was captured with perfect clarity. Created a separate folder on the phone specifically for these images, made immediate backup to the cloud. This was concrete, undeniable evidence in Emma's own hand. For the rest of the weekend, while maintaining a normal appearance for Emma, Sarah searched frantically. She searched emergency numbers for child abuse reports in Massachusetts, took notes on Springfield police contacts, read about legal procedures and victims' rights. He learned about how to present evidence, how to protect the child during investigations, what resources were available. On Saturday night, after Emma fell asleep, Sarah sent a long, detailed message to Jennifer, her sister in Boston. He attached some of the photos from the notebook, explained everything he had discovered in the last week. Jennifer's response came in less than 5 minutes, written all in capital letters. "Sarah, you need to go to the police immediately. Don't confront him alone. This is dangerous. Please promise me that you will involve the authorities." But Sarah had already made a different decision. "I wanted to confront Richard personally first. I wanted to look him in the eye when I showed him the evidence. I wanted to hear if he would try to deny it or if he would finally admit what he had done." She needed that moment, that direct confrontation, for Emma, for herself, for all the other children Richard might have hurt over the years. But it would not be reckless. Sarah made a careful plan. I would send copies of all the evidence to Jennifer before I went. She would give her sister a specific deadline of 2 hours to call the Springfield police if she had no news confirming that she was safe. He would leave Emma in a safe place, away from confrontation, and he would record everything on his cell phone, capturing any admission or reaction from Richard. On Sunday morning, Sarah woke up before dawn. He had not slept more than 2 hours. He's running all night, mentally rehearsing what he would say, how he would react to different scenarios. He made strong coffee, sat down at the still, dark kitchen table, and revised his plan once more. At 7 in the morning, he sent Jennifer all the photos from Emma's notebook, a copy of the notes he had made about conversations with his daughter, Richard's full address, the phone number of the Springfield police. Together he wrote, "I'm going to confront him today at 11 a.m. If you don't get a message from me by 1 p.m. saying it's all resolved, call the police immediately and give them all this information." Jennifer responded instantly, clearly already awake and waiting. "Sarah, please reconsider. Let the police do it. It's their job." "I need to do this, Jen, by Emma, but I'll be safe, I promise. Just keep an eye on your phone." When Emma woke up at 8, Sarah prepared special heart-shaped pancakes, the girls' favorite breakfast. They sat together at the table, Sarah watching her daughter eat with an appetite that had returned in recent weeks, smiling as she told about a funny dream she had the night before. "My love," Sarah began carefully when Emma finished eating, wiping crumbs from her mouth with her napkin. "Today we need to go talk to Grandpa Richard." The smile instantly disappeared from Emma's face. His eyes widened in panic, hands grabbing the edge of the table. "But you said I'd never need to see you again, and you don't have to keep it, I promise." Sarah quickly circled the table and knelt next to her daughter's chair, taking her hands. "You'll be waiting in the car while I talk to him. The doors will be locked. You'll be completely safe, and I'll be there in less than 15 minutes. But I need you to be close in case the police want to talk to you later." "Why do we need to go there?" Emma asked in a trembling voice, tears already forming in the corners of her eyes. "Because I found your notebook, my love," Sarah said gently, watching her daughter's reaction. "The notebook with the drawings and words about Grandpa and the basement. And now that I know exactly what happened, I need to do something about it. I need to make sure he never does that to any kids again." Emma began to cry silently, but this time there was something different in the tears. It wasn't pure fear as before, but a mixture of relief and residual anxiety. "Aren't you mad at me for writing those things?" Sarah pulled her daughter into a tight hug, feeling her little body relax against her. "My love, you are the bravest person I know." Writing that down was his way of trying to process what was happening when he couldn't talk about it. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with what you have done. You are amazing, and I will protect you always, no matter what." They hugged for long minutes, Sarah stroking her daughter's hair, whispering comforting words. Finally, Emma pulled away, wiping away her tears. "Okay, Mum, I'll go with you. But please don't delay. I promise." At 10:30 a.m., Sarah parked her car in front of Richard's house on Oak Street. The street was quiet and sunny, neighbors mowing lawns, children riding bicycles on the sidewalk. Everything seemed so normal, so suburban and safe, that it was almost surreal to think of the horror that had happened over and over again inside this seemingly ordinary house. Emma was in the back seat with her belt buckled, hugging the teddy bear. Sarah locked all the car doors, left the keys with Emma. "You know how to unlock if you need to leave for some reason, right? But only if it is absolutely necessary. Stay here, doors locked, until I come back." Emma nodded, eyes wide and frightened. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead through the half-open window. 15 minutes at most, I promise. He checked his phone one last time. He had activated the voice recording app that would run in the background throughout the conversation. He took 3 deep breaths, mentally preparing himself, and then walked determinedly to the front door of Richard's house. He knocked on the door hard, 3 solid knocks that echoed inside the house. He heard footsteps approaching, saw someone's shadow through the frosted glass of the door. Richard opened it with a surprised expression on his face. "Sarah, I didn't expect you today." He looked past her, looking for Emma. "Where is the little one?" "Inside the car." Sarah pushed past him, entering the room without waiting for an invitation. "And it will stay there. I need to talk to you now, Richard." Something in Sarah's voice, in the icy and determined tone, made Richard close the door slowly, expression changing from surprise to caution. "Of course we can talk. Did something happen? You seem nervous." "Nervous is an interesting word." Sarah turned to face him, keeping a safe distance but confrontational posture. "I would say I'm absolutely furious, actually." Richard frowned, confusion apparent in his expression. "Furious? Why? Sarah, what's going on?" Instead of responding with words, Sarah took out her phone and opened the photo gallery. He moved on to the first image of Emma's notebook, that initial drawing with her grandfather and granddaughter, and the words about the secret. He turned the screen to Richard. "I want you to explain this to me." Sarah observed every micro-expression on Richard's face as he looked at the image. He saw the exact moment when he recognized what he was seeing. The color completely disappeared from his face, leaving him gray. His eyes widened briefly before he tried to control his reaction. The jaw clenched visibly. That's..." Richard stammered, trying to form coherent words. Clearly he did not expect to be confronted. He had no prepared answer. "Where did you get that from?" "From Emma's backpack." Sarah moved on to the next photo, showing the list of dates. "She documented everything, Richard. Every Thursday, every time you took her to that basement. Every moment of your special time with her. If this story is moving you the way it is moving me when it tells it, it is because we recognize together the vital importance of protecting our children. Don't leave now. What follows will show you why relying on maternal instinct can literally save lives." Richard tried to regain his composure, clearing his throat. "Sarah, you're misinterpreting. These are just child's drawings, children's imagination. You know how kids are, they make up stories." Imagination. Sarah felt the fury explode inside her chest like volcanic lava. He quickly went through several photos, showing drawing after drawing, page after page of words. "Is this imagination for you? She wrote that you said you loved her in a special way, that it was a secret, that I would be mad if she told. They were innocent jokes, Sarah." Richard raised his hands defensively, voice rising slightly in a tone that tried to be appeasing, but left in despair. "I would never hurt Emma. You know me, you've known me for years. To know you?" Sarah laughed humorlessly, bitter and broken sound. I thought I knew you. I thought I could trust you as the most precious person in my life. But you manipulated my daughter, Richard. He made her keep secrets that terrified her. It made her think it would be her fault if something happened. It made her have nightmares for months. It wasn't like that. You're exaggerating everything. Richard started to get defensive now, trying to turn the situation around. You're being hysterical, putting ideas in the girl's head. Hysterical? Sarah stepped forward toward Richard, who instinctively retreated. My 9-year-old daughter is terrified. She has nightmares. He can't sleep without a light on. She's glued to me all the time because she's terrified of being alone with you. That's not hysteria, Richard. That's a mother protecting her daughter from a predator. The word was suspended in the air between them, heavy and definitive. Richard paled even more, if that was possible. You can't call me that. Never have I ever. I'm not. Isn't it what? Sarah didn't give him room to finish. Isn't it someone who has repeatedly taken a child to a secluded basement? Isn't it someone who told her to keep secrets? Isn't it someone who hugged her in ways that made her uncomfortable? That he said he loved her in a special way that no one else would understand? I love my granddaughter, Richard finally burst out, voice breaking emotionally. I lost my wife. I was alone. Emma was the only joy in my life. Love doesn't leave a child terrified. Sarah screamed back, all the weeks of contained anguish and anger finally boiling over. Love does not manipulate. Love does not threaten. Love doesn't make a 9-year-old feel so dirty and scared that he locks himself in his room crying. The words echoed through the room. Richard was silent, breathing heavy, eyes moist. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah could hear her own heart beating furiously in her ears, blood running hot with adrenaline and fury. I know what you did to my daughter, Richard, Sarah said in a lower voice now, but still firm as steel. I know the secrets. I know about the basement. I know about Thursdays. I know everything. And now the police will also know. The word police worked as a trigger. The remnant of color on Richard's face disappeared completely. He staggered slightly, leaning on the arm of the couch. You can't do that. It will destroy my reputation, my life. I am respected in this community. You should have thought about this before you abused your granddaughter's trust. Sarah picked up her phone again, this time opening the phone app. I have all the evidence. I have the notebook. I have Emma's testimonies. And I have this recorded conversation where you didn't deny anything I accused. Richard looked at the phone in Sarah's hand in growing horror. You was recording? Every word, Sarah confirmed. And before I came here, I sent copies of everything to my sister with instructions to call the police if I don't hear from them in less than an hour. So you have two options, Richard. Either you admit what you've done now, show a shred of decency and take responsibility, or I call the police right now and they drag you out of here in handcuffs in front of all your neighbors who respect you so much. Sarah watched Richard crumble before her eyes. His shoulders droop, the upright, confident posture he had always maintained curved inward. He let himself fall heavily on the couch, head in his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was broken, barely audible. I never meant to hurt her, but it hurt. Sarah offered neither comfort nor forgiveness. You hurt my daughter in ways she will carry for the rest of her life, and now you're going to pay for it. Sarah dialed 911 without taking her eyes off Richard. The phone rang twice before an operator answered with a professional voice. 911, what is your emergency? I need to report child abuse. Sarah kept her voice steady, clear. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm at the attacker's house now at 847 Oak Street, Springfield. I have documented evidence of abuse of my 9-year-old daughter by her grandfather. I need you to send officers immediately. Is there anyone in immediate danger at the scene? The operator asked, tone changing to more urgent. My daughter is safe in the locked car outside. I'm inside the house with the aggressor, but he's not physically violent. I just need the police to come now. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me, Mom, The operator kept Sarah on the phone, asking protocol questions about exact location, description of the house, if there were weapons in the place. While Sarah answered the questions methodically, Richard sat on the couch, motionless, looking at the floor. He didn't try to run away. He didn't try to argue anymore. It was as if every fight had come out of him at once, leaving only a broken man who would finally be forced to face the consequences of his actions. In less than 15 minutes, Sarah heard the sirens approaching down the street. He looked out the window and saw 2 Springfield police cars pulling up in front of the house. Neighbors began to appear at the windows and balconies, curious about the commotion on the normally quiet street. "They have arrived," Sarah said to the operator. "I'll answer the door." "Stay safe, ma'am." The operator hung up. Sarah opened the door before the officers needed to knock. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, a female detective standing right behind them. The detective stepped forward, showing identification. "Detective Williams, Springfield Police Department." "Are you Sarah Thompson?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed, surprised at how calm her own voice sounded. "My daughter is in the car. She is 9 years old and she is a victim. The aggressor is sitting on the sofa in the living room. He is not armed." The 2 uniformed officers entered first, cautiously approaching Richard, who was still sitting with his head in his hands. Detective Williams stayed with Sarah at the entrance. "Can you show me the evidence you mentioned to the operator?" Sarah spent the next 20 minutes showing the detective all the photos in Emma's notebook, explaining her daughter's change in behavior in recent months, repeating parts of the conversations she had had with Emma. The detective listened attentively, making notes in a small notebook, asking specific and direct questions. Meanwhile, in the room, the officers had asked Richard to stand up and were asking questions. Sarah listened to fragments of the conversation. Richard initially tried to deny it, but when confronted with the evidence and the recording of the conversation with Sarah, he began to admit parts of what had happened. He minimized it, called it misunderstandings, but the admissions were there. "I'll need to talk to your daughter too," Detective Williams said to Sarah, "but we will do it in a very gentle way, in an appropriate environment. She doesn't need to enter this house. Emma is in the car." Sarah looked out the window, seeing her daughter still sitting in the back seat, eyes wide, watching all the movement. "She's scared. I go to her slowly. I'm going to introduce myself, explain that I'm here to help." The detective spoke in a reassuring voice, clearly trained to deal with child victims of trauma. "You can come with me, if she feels more comfortable." Sarah and Detective Williams walked to the car together. Sarah unlocked the doors, opened the back one, and immediately Emma practically jumped into her mother's arms. "Is it over? Will he leave? Can I stop being afraid?" "Yes, my love." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, kissing the top of her head repeatedly. "It's over. You are safe now. Mother will not let anyone hurt you ever again." Detective Williams knelt at Emma's height, maintaining a gentle and comforting expression. "Hi, Emma. My name is Sarah too, just like your mother. I'm a detective and my job is to protect brave kids like you. Your mother told me that you were very brave, talking to her about things that scared you. You are an amazing girl." Emma looked at the detective shyly, still clinging to her mother. "Is Grandpa going to jail? We're going to investigate everything properly, and if we find out that he did wrong things, like his mother told me, yes, he's going to have to answer for it." The detective explained carefully. "But the most important thing now is that you're safe, and that no adult can hurt you or make you scared without consequences." Inside the house, officers were putting handcuffs on Richard. Sarah saw through the window panes, felt Emma tense in her arms. She turned her daughter so as not to see the scene directly. Richard was led towards one of the patrol cars, head down, walking slowly between the 2 officers. Mrs. Patterson appeared running from her house next door, colourful robe fluttering. "Sarah, what's going on? Why are they taking Richard?" Before Sarah could answer, Detective Williams stepped forward. "Madam, I'll have to ask you to go back to your house. This is an active police investigation and I cannot discuss details." "But Richard has been my neighbor for years," the elderly lady insisted, looking shocked at the patrol car where Richard was being placed in the back seat. "He is a good man. There must be some deception." "There is no mistake," Sarah said in a firm voice, keeping Emma turned away so as not to see the confusion. "And soon, every neighborhood will know the truth about who Richard Thompson really is." Mrs. Patterson looked from Sarah to the detective to Emma being protected in her mother's arms, and something in the set finally clicked in her mind. The expression of confusion changed to horror gradually. She covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head in silent denial. Oh my God, no." The lady slowly retreated. That sweet girl. Detective Williams gently but firmly guided Mrs. Patterson back toward her home. "I will need to talk to you later as well, as part of the investigation. Please make yourself available." Sarah was taken to the Springfield police station in a separate patrol car with Emma. Not in a crime vehicle, the detective made a point of clarifying, but in an unmarked car so as not to further traumatize the girl. During the journey, Sarah called Jennifer. "Everything is resolved." Sarah said the agreed words, knowing that her sister was anxiously waiting for the phone. "We are going to the police station to give formal statements. Thank God." Jennifer let out a breath that seemed to be holding for hours. "Do you want me to drive there? I can be in Springfield in 2 hours." "Not yet. Let's see how things play out here. But thank you, Jen, for everything, for supporting me when I thought I was going crazy." "You've never been crazy. You were always right," Jennifer said firmly. "You saved your daughter, Sarah. Never forget that." At the police station, Emma was taken to a special room designated for interviews with child victims. It was colorful, with toys, comfortable cushions, designed to be less intimidating than a normal interrogation room. Detective Williams conducted the interview in person with a specialized psychologist present, while Sarah waited outside with her stomach churning with anxiety. The interview lasted 40 minutes. When they finished, the detective came to talk to Sarah. "Your daughter is incredibly brave. She told everything clearly, consistent with what you had already reported. This strengthens the case immensely." "What now?" Sarah asked, feeling the weight of weeks of tension finally starting to ease from her shoulders. "What happens to Richard? He is being held for questioning." Based on Emma's testimony, the evidence documented in the notebook, and her recording of the partial confession, there is a solid basis for formal charges. The detective explained in a professional tone, but not cold, "I will recommend that the prosecution file charges of second-degree child abuse and child manipulation. Is he going to jail?" Sarah needed to hear confirmation. "This depends on several legal factors, but it probably does. At least initially detained without bail, given the risk of flight and destruction of evidence." The detective gently placed her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You did the right thing by coming to us. Many mothers ignore the signs or are afraid to confront family members. You put your daughter's safety first, and it saved Emma from potentially much worse trauma." The words should have brought comfort, but Sarah only felt overwhelming exhaustion. Do they have other victims, other children he may have hurt?" The detective hesitated, clearly pondering how much she could disclose. "We are just beginning the investigation, but yes, there are indications that we will explore. His past as a teacher will be scrutinized in detail." Sarah's stomach churned again. How many other families were about to discover horrible truths about the man they trusted with their children? Before delving deeper into this story that has changed so many lives, help bring important real stories to those who really care. If you want to be a part of this mission to protect families through knowledge, don't forget to like this video now, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you never miss content that can save children. 2 weeks after that Sunday that changed everything, Sarah was sitting in the waiting room of Detective Williams' office at the Springfield police station. Emma was at school on a normal day, as Sarah desperately tried to maintain to give her daughter some sense of normalcy. Jennifer had driven from Boston and was sitting next to her sister, offering quiet but solid support. The detective finally appeared, thick briefcase under her arm. "Thank you for coming. I have updates on the case that I thought they should know directly from me." The three women sat in a small conference room. Detective Williams opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of documents, photos, and notes. Richard Thompson has been formally charged with 4 counts related to child abuse and child manipulation. He initially pleaded not guilty, but his lawyer is already talking about a possible settlement. Sarah felt bile rising in her throat. Agreement. Will he try to avoid judgment? It is common in these cases, the detective explained. But I want you to know that the prosecution will not accept any plea deal that does not include significant prison time and permanent registration as a sex offender. Did they discover other victims? Sarah asked, even though she was afraid of the answer. The detective nodded darkly. 2 other families came forward after his arrest was reported locally. One of them was a second cousin who was 10 years old when it happened, in the 90s when Richard was still an active teacher. She never told anyone because she was ashamed and afraid that they wouldn't believe her. Oh my God. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, tears filling her eyes. He had been doing this for decades. There is even more. The detective turned a few pages in the documents. When we dug into the files of the primary school where he worked, we discovered that he was quietly retired early 8 years ago after unofficial complaints from parents about inappropriate behavior with female students. Nothing was formally documented or reported to the authorities at the time, which was a serious mistake on the part of the school administration. Jennifer squeezed Sarah's hand tightly. So it's serial predator, and everyone was silent, protecting his reputation. Essentially, yes, the detective agreed, and that's why what you've done, Sarah, is so important. You broke that silence. You didn't let reputation or social pressure stop you from protecting your daughter. And now other victims are finding the courage to speak out as well. Emma is... Are you coping well? Sarah asked, changing the subject because the weight of responsibility and discovery was getting too much to process. I would strongly recommend specialized therapy to her. The detective swiped a card across the table. This is a psychologist who works specifically with abused children. She is excellent, and the sooner Emma begins proper healing process, the better her recovery will be in the long run. Sarah picked up the card with hands shaking slightly. Dr. Carmen Martinez, child psychologist specializing in trauma. I'm going to call you today, and you should also consider therapy, Sarah, Jennifer said softly, the first time she had spoken since they sat down. You went through trauma too. To see his daughter suffer, to carry this weight of investigation, the confrontation. It is not weakness to seek help to process all this. The weeks that followed were whirlwind of conflicting emotions for Sarah. Immense relief that Emma was finally safe and that Richard would face consequences. Overwhelming guilt for not having realized before, for having trusted blindly, for having let it happen for so many months. Burning rage against Richard, against the system that allowed him to operate without consequences for decades, against herself for not protecting Emma better. Emma began weekly therapy with Dr. Martinez, and gradually, session by session, Sarah saw transformation take place. Nightmares decreased in frequency. The appetite has completely returned. Emma began to speak more openly about what had happened, not with shame, but with a growing understanding that it was not her fault. 6 months after that transformative Sunday, Richard Thompson accepted a deal with the prosecution. He pleaded guilty to second-degree child abuse in exchange for a reduced sentence. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years if he maintained exemplary behavior. He would be permanently registered as a high-risk sex offender name and photo in a public database accessible to anyone. Sarah was present at the sentencing hearing, sitting in the front row with Jennifer on one side and Emma on the other. Emma had asked to be there. She wanted to see for herself that the man who had hurt her would be punished. Dr. Martinez had carefully prepared the girl for the experiment, explaining what would happen, ensuring that she understood that she would not need to speak or interact with Richard in any way. When Richard was taken to the courtroom in orange prison uniform, handcuffs on his wrists, he looked like he had aged decades. The man who had always carried an upright, confident posture was now hunched over, eyes on the ground, expression defeated. He didn't look once toward the family he had destroyed. The judge was harsh in his comments before pronouncing sentence. "Mr. Thompson, you have abused your position of trust in the most vile way possible." He used his status as a respected grandfather, as an admired former teacher, as a prominent member of the community to access and manipulate vulnerable children. Evidence shows a pattern of predatory behavior that lasted for decades. The system failed to stop you before, but it won't fail today. When the judge finally pronounced 12 years in the state penitentiary, Sarah felt Emma relax next to her, as if invisible weight had finally been removed completely from her small shoulders. The girl looked up, met her mother's eyes and whispered, "Is it really over now?" Sarah hugged her daughter, tears flowing freely. "Yes, my love, it's really over. He will no longer hurt you or any other child." On leaving the court, Sarah was approached by one of the other victims who had come forward during the investigation. She was a woman in her 30s, blonde hair tied back in a ponytail, eyes still bearing shadows of old trauma. Her name was Patricia, and she had been Richard's student when she was 7. "Thank you," Patricia said in a choked voice. "Thank you for being brave enough to report it. I carried it alone for 23 years. I never told anyone because I was sure they wouldn't believe me against the respected Professor Thompson. But when I saw that you had denounced it, that you had evidence, that he was being investigated, I finally found the courage to speak out too." Sarah hugged the unknown woman who shared such similar pain. "None of us should have gone through this. But now he will pay, and no other child will suffer at his hands." The two women stood for a few minutes in the hallway of the courtroom, united by shared experience that no one should have to endure. Other victims also approached, forming an unlikely circle of survivors who could finally speak their truths without fear of not being believed. There were 5 women in all, ranging in age from 23 to 42, all bearing invisible but deep scars left by the same predator. "We need to do something with this," said one of them, a woman named Rebecca, who had been Richard's student for 15 years. "We need to make sure that other kids learn the signs, that other parents know what to look for." Sarah nodded, feeling purpose born out of pain. "You are right. We need to turn this into something bigger than our individual pain." In the months following the trial, Sarah immersed herself in the process of healing, not only for Emma, but also for herself. She followed Jennifer's advice and began her own therapy with a psychologist specializing in secondary trauma, learning to process the guilt she still carried, despite knowing rationally that it wasn't her fault. She learned that mothers of victims are also victims in a different way, and that seeking help was not weakness, but strength. Emma continued her weekly sessions with Dr. Martinez, and the transformation was remarkable. The girl who had been quiet, frightened, withdrawn, was gradually returning to being the cheerful, talkative child she had always been. The nightmares have practically disappeared. The appetite was completely restored. Emma returned to actively participate in classes, making friends, playing in the playground without constant fear hovering over her. A year after Richard's sentencing, Sarah was sitting in the backyard of her new home, watching Emma play with 2 friends from school. They had moved to a different neighborhood from Springfield, starting completely from scratch in a place with no painful memories. The house was smaller than the previous one, but it had a spacious backyard where Emma could run freely, laugh out loud, be a child without the weight of terrible secrets haunting her. Sarah had resigned from the night shift at the hospital, accepting a position in a smaller medical clinic with more predictable and flexible schedules. He made less money, but he had more time with Emma, and that was the trade-off he gratefully made every day. Some things were more important than larger bank accounts. Jennifer drove from Boston every weekend, strengthening family bonds that had always been solid but now ran even deeper. The sisters had gone through an impossible test together and came out the other side more connected than ever. Jennifer had become a present and active aunt in Emma's life, offering the additional stability and unconditional love that every recovering child needed. But perhaps the most significant transformation was the work Sarah began with the other survivors. Together, they formed a support group that met monthly in a community space provided by the local church. Not St. Mary's Church, where Richard had been a respected member, but a different congregation across town that embraced their mission with genuine compassion. The group started small, just the original 5 survivors sharing stories, processing trauma, offering mutual support. But when news of the group spread through the community, other victims of child abuse began to appear. Not necessarily Richard's victims, but survivors of other predators, other situations, all desperately in need of safe space to speak their truths. Sarah never imagined becoming an activist, but that was exactly what was happening. She began speaking in schools, talking to parents about warning signs, about the importance of believing in children, about how predators build masks of respectability specifically to access victims. Her story with Emma became a powerful educational tool, a real example of how trusting the maternal instinct can literally save lives. "I almost ignored the signs," Sarah said in each lecture, her voice firm but charged with emotion. "I almost convinced myself that I was being paranoid, that I was seeing problems where there were none, because the abuser was a respected member of the community, because he was family, because everyone said I should trust him." But that tightness in my chest, that inner voice telling me something was wrong, was my maternal instinct alerting me. And when I finally heard that voice, I saved my daughter. The lectures always ended with the same message. If you are a mother or father, and something seems wrong with your child, investigate. It doesn't matter who is involved. It doesn't matter how many people say you're exaggerating. Children do not change their behavior for no reason. They do not invent unfounded fears. And when a child is afraid of a specific adult, there is reason for that fear, always. 2 years after Richard's arrest, an expanded investigation by Springfield police revealed an even more shocking scope of his crimes. School records that had been negligently discarded were recovered from old archives, showing a pattern of complaints that went back decades. At least 12 different families had reported discomfort or inappropriate behavior by Richard with their daughters throughout his 40 years as a teacher. In most cases, school administration had downplayed the complaints, attributing them to misunderstandings or over-interpretations. In some cases, they asked parents not to formalize complaints to avoid unfairly tarnishing a reputation as a dedicated teacher. The system failed repeatedly, allowing Richard to continue operating without real consequences until finally, decades later, Sarah refused to remain silent. The revelations sparked a massive public scandal in Springfield. School district faced lawsuits from several families whose daughters had been victims of Richard during school years. Policies have been completely overhauled, implementing mandatory reporting protocols for any complaint of inappropriate behavior, no matter how respected or well-liked the teacher involved was. Emma, now 11, was thriving. Therapy continued, but sessions had reduced from weekly to monthly. She spoke openly about what had happened when appropriate, not with shame, but with a mature understanding that she had been a victim, and that nothing that happened was her fault. Dr. Martinez has often commented on Emma's impressive resilience, attributing successful recovery in large part to Sarah's immediate and unconditional support. Many children carry these traumas alone for years, sometimes their entire lives. The psychologist explained during one of the follow-up appointments with Sarah. Emma had the crucial advantage of being believed immediately, of seeing justice being done, of having a mother who prioritized her emotional safety above all else. This makes a monumental difference in the recovery process. Sarah embraced those words, allowing herself to finally release some of the crushing guilt she had carried for so long. She could not change the fact that Emma had suffered, but she acted as soon as she knew and did everything in her power to protect and support her daughter. And in the end, that was the true definition of protective motherhood. Today, 6 years after that transformative Sunday in October, Sarah Thompson sits in the backyard of her home, watching Emma, now 15, studying for a history test at the picnic table under the shade of large oak trees. The teenager is confident, articulate, passionate about social justice, and openly interested in pursuing a career in child psychology to help other children who have experienced similar trauma. Richard Thompson is serving a 12-year sentence in the state penitentiary, with the possibility of parole that has been denied twice due to psychological evaluations that deemed him still a risk to children. He is permanently registered as a sex offender, name and photo accessible in a public database that any parent can verify before entrusting their children to someone. The full investigation uncovered a total of 19 victims over 5 decades, a pattern of abuse that began when Richard was in his early 20s as a new teacher. Some victims have never come forward publicly, choosing to maintain privacy and process trauma privately. Others joined Sarah's support group, finding community and healing in a safe space where they could finally speak without judgment. Sarah learned the most important lesson of her life in those terrible months of discovery and confrontation. She learned that trusting the maternal instinct is not paranoia, but protection. He learned that tightness in his chest, that visceral feeling that something is wrong, is body and mind working together to warn of real danger. He learned that reputation, social position, family relationships, none of these should ever take priority over a child's safety. And most of all, Sarah learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. She was afraid of being wrong, afraid of destroying relationships, afraid of being called crazy or paranoid. But she acted anyway, put Emma's protection above all those fears. And this singular choice changed not only their lives, but potentially saved countless other children from suffering at the hands of the same predator. If you are a mother or father watching this story so far, engrave these words in your heart as if they were a sacred commandment. When something seems wrong with your child, it is probably wrong. Children do not change their behavior for no deep reason. They do not invent fears or anxieties out of thin air. They do not fake nightmares or develop unexplained phobias on a whim. It doesn't matter who the person generating this discomfort is, whether it's a beloved grandfather, a beloved uncle, a respected teacher, a helpful neighbor, a dedicated coach, an admired religious leader. If your daughter or son shows unexplained fear, sudden withdrawal, worrisome behavioral changes related to the specific person, investigate without rest and without shame. Sarah almost ignored the signs because Richard was family, because everyone in the community trusted him implicitly, because it seemed absolutely impossible that such a respected man could be a predator. But she listened to a mother's heart at the crucial moment, trusted the instinct that screamed that something was deeply wrong, and that trust saved her daughter. You can do that too. You also have that instinct, that inner voice that warns you when a child you love is in danger. Don't ignore that voice. Don't let other people convince you that you're overreacting or being overprotective. Better to investigate and find out that I was wrong than to ignore it and find out too late that I was right. and to help more families recognize these vital signs of danger so that stories like this reach parents who may be living a similar situation right now without knowing how to act. Leave your like on this video now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you never miss content that can literally save lives. Share this story with other mothers, other fathers, teachers, anyone who works or lives with children, because information is power and knowledge saves lives. And if this story moved you deeply, made you reflect on signs that you may have ignored, or gave you the courage to act in a situation that worries you, you need to watch the next video that is now appearing on your screen. It's about a mother who realized that her daughter's best friend was hiding a disturbing secret about family life. And when she decided to investigate further, she discovered something that no parent would ever want to face. This story will make you understand even more the critical importance of always being attentive, always vigilant, always willing to question when something doesn't feel right. Click now and stay with us, because each story here is a vital alert, precious learning, powerful tool to protect those we love most. Always remember these fundamental truths. Being a mother or father is not just about giving love, affection, shelter, and food on the table. It is also to be a ruthless guardian, fierce protector, fearless warrior when necessary. It's looking beyond deceptive appearances, questioning when something doesn't make sense, even if everyone says otherwise, acting courageously, even when everyone around you says you're overreacting or being paranoid. Sarah could have ignored the subtle signals. She could have believed she was being an overprotective mother. She could have blindly trusted Richard's impeccable reputation, as everyone around did. But she chose to trust the instinct that every mother carries within herself, that primitive and powerful voice that exists specifically to protect our children from dangers that are not always obvious. And this singular choice, this courage to act, despite fear and doubt, changed absolutely everything. Today, Emma is safe, healthy, thriving in continuous therapy, building a full life without the weight of terrible secrets crushing her spirit. Richard is in prison, serving well-deserved years in prison, finally paying for decades of crimes that the system has repeatedly failed to punish. And Sarah sleeps peacefully every night, knowing that she protected her daughter, that she was brave when it mattered most, that she trusted herself even when no one else believed. You also have this strength within you, this maternal or paternal power to protect fiercely. Use this strength without hesitation. Trust these instincts without shame. Protect your children always, relentlessly, because in the end, there is nothing more important in this world than the safety and well-being of the children we love. A big kiss from the bottom of your heart, and until the next heartwarming story that can change lives.